On today's episode of the Mark Titus Show, since you last heard from us, when we talked about Feast Week and how crazy it was and all the ranked teams going down, kind of a quiet couple days of college basketball. We had only 4 of the top 5 lose in the last couple days. There's only been 4 top 5 teams lose in the last couple days. Last night, Kansas goes to Creighton. Creighton gets a massive win, a get-right win. Creighton, they had the 3-game losing streak and lost at home to Nebraska in the rivalry game. Is it a rivalry game? I think it's a rivalry game, but I think it's also if you talk like this and it's a way to signal you're unsure of something. I think it's a rivalry game, but I also think a lot of people cheer for like Nebraska. They call them the J-Skers in Nebraska. Tate, they're people that like Nebraska football, but Creighton basketball. Oh. And there's a lot of crossover. Growing up in Indiana, I knew a lot of people that liked Indiana basketball, Notre Dame football. They had the reversible jackets, as we joked. You know, once football season ended, you flip it over, and now you wear the IU. So I'm not really sure where the Nebraska-Creighton rivalry falls because there's a lot of crossover. A lot of people cheer for both. I don't know what happens. Be that as it may, I've always thought it was a semi-rivalry. Nebraska goes to Creighton, kind of hands Creighton their ass. Creighton loses 3 in a row. And what better way to turn your season around than to beat the number 1 team and beat them pretty handily,
wire to wire.
Wire to wire. They handed, and as Greg McDermott said in the postgame interview, this is where number 1 teams go to die. Mm-hmm. They spanked number 1 UConn last year as well. So that's the recipe. Creighton basketball is not doing so hot. Have the number 1 team in the country come in and beat them pretty easily, and you'll turn everything around. That happens last night. Meanwhile, the game of the night, Auburn goes to Durham. Duke takes care of business. Finally, we see Duke in a not quite the same situation as the Kansas-Kentucky game where it's a tie game and you know there's under a minute and this possession, the entire game kind of hinges on this one singular possession. But it was a close game against a very good team, and Duke so far this season has struggled, as you might expect with a team led by a bunch of freshmen. They have struggled in this spot. On this night, they do not struggle, and a guy by the name of Isaiah Evans is kind of the story. Cooper Flagg is the best player as he's always going to be. Janai Broome was also awesome. But the story was Isaiah Evans in the first half, hitting 6 threes, going fucking bonkers.
Hadn't played in any of their big games.
A lot of DNPs on the season for this guy. He's a guy that Duke fans have been clamoring to see. I think John Shire would argue he's young. He's very skinny. He just can't handle physical. Get some of these better teams. Maybe the fear has been that he's going to get pushed around a little bit. Defense might be a question. Be that as it may, the guy's a fucking bucket, and it was on full display in the first half. Didn't even play a lot in the second half, which was like, I don't know. They got what they needed out of him. They got 18 points in the first half. Duke gets a big win over Auburn, who I'm going to say that actually I'll save it for the show. I'll save it for the show. Meanwhile, Marquette goes down at Iowa State. Iowa State gets the big win that nobody watched because Iowa State. I don't know what Iowa State has done to the college basketball gods. But every single time Iowa State is playing a marquee game, every single time you pull up your score app and you're looking at the top 25 games and you see a top 10 Iowa State team playing another top 10 team and you get excited and you click on it and you're like, what channel is that going to be on? It always says not TV. It just says you're not going to be able to watch it.
You had to have ESPN Plus to watch the 5-6 matchup last night.
They're in Maui and they're playing on ESPNU every game. I don't know what Iowa State did, but Iowa State's going to be a 1 seed and no one's going to have watched a second of them all season. Mm-hmm. We're gonna get to the tournament and college basketball fans will be like, was Iowa State really that good? It's like, yeah, man, they were fucking wrecking teams, but unfortunately, they just weren't doing it on TV. Very fun night of college basketball. Mississippi State got a big win. Shout out to Brandon Walker for that one. We might not talk about our Buckeyes, but I think we might have to talk about the Buckeyes. Meanwhile, there's other stuff from Tuesday night. Kentucky, Clemson. Michigan gets a big win at Wisconsin. This Michigan team I find very, very interesting. I'd like to talk about them a little bit. An absolutely loaded last couple of days of college basketball. We'll do our best to talk about as much as we can coming up. All right, I got so excited at the top, I completely forgot about Baylor, UConn. UConn got a get-right game. Mm-hmm. UConn, big win over Baylor, but it also, like Jeremy Roach gets a concussion, Edgecombe wasn't playing, Caravan wasn't playing. Not saying it doesn't count, not saying there's an asterisk next to the game. Just saying I think when I saw that game on the schedule at the start of the season, you'll have to forgive me for not being quite as excited. Based on what's happened so far this season, I wasn't quite as excited to watch the Baylor UConn game. I did watch it, obviously, and UConn needed that win because as Dan Hurley said, we're not doing MTEs, we're doing marquee home and home games, and I was like, man, if UConn loses this, then we're done with the marquee home games. So thank God UConn won, or else UConn would just beat the shit out of
just
300, the 300 plus KenPom teams in the non-conference, because I don't know what they would have done if they would have lost this game.
That was a huge win last night, and I know Caravan was out, and I know Edgecombe was out, and it was at Connecticut. So I like to see the fire back from Danny Hurley. Did you see him headbutt?
I did. Yeah.
Incredible.
Mahaney, yeah.
But also, just looking ahead, this UConn team has been reeling, and they've got Texas coming up, and they've got Gonzaga coming up. This is one they needed last night, so it was good to see him get it.
Yeah. I want to talk about Duke Auburn, though. Let's start there. We'll talk. I forgot to mention Carolina, Alabama. I don't think Carolina's very good, but we can talk about Alabama. Got to get right win as well. I want to talk about Duke Auburn, which I know Kansas is the number one team in the country. They lost, and that should be the story. That should be the top story. The number one team goes on the road, loses their first road game. I understand all that. I felt like Auburn is the best team in the country up until last night. I don't know if I've seen enough to really disqualify. Given the schedule that they've played so far, given how they came out of the gates against Duke, yes, of course they lost this game. I'm not saying I would rank Auburn ahead of Duke, I'm not arguing any of that. I'm saying when you look at the totality of the season, I don't come away from last night, despite Duke winning, I don't come away saying, man, I might have been wrong about Auburn being the best team in the country. I think every time you watch Auburn, you continue to see the vision. You continue to see why you should be so high on these guys. And having said that, I've also been very high on Duke this year, and I know I've already said this 4 different times, and it's basically every time Auburn plays a good team, I say this, but I really mean it this time. I do think I saw the best 2 teams in the country play last night. I do think this time I mean it. I said it about Houston. I said it about Iowa State. I think I mean it this time.
You do, and you stole the words right out of my mouth. We've been talking. So Auburn ranked number 2 in the AP poll, but their resume shows that they're number 1. All they did last night to harm their resume was they went to probably the second best or the most talented team in the country on the road at Cameron Indoor, and it really went down to the wire. If Tyrese Proctor doesn't hit a 3-pointer, dagger off with 1 second left on the shot clock, I think it was about to be an interesting finish there. And Auburn could be 8-0 right now with 4 great wins.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
They're legit.
Their schedule's crazy. 2 things. I have lineup questions about both of these teams. And I'm not saying I have the answers, and I'm not clowning the coaches. I'm a neutral observer that's watching. I haven't even watched all their games. I've watched both these teams play when they're playing their big games,
showcase games.
And these are things that stand out to me. And I would just love some answers for them. Number 1, I want to start with Auburn. Todd Pettiford.
Big game, Todd.
I don't understand. This guy is the most. I think he's the most talented guy on the roster. And he's on a team with a guy who might win National Player of the Year. Janai Broom is unfucking real. And Todd Pettiford, every time he has the ball in his hands, I trust that something good is going to happen. Now, there are the one turnover he had where he kind of tripped over his own feet. He got blitzed on a ball screen and kind of tripped over his own feet and gave Proctor an easy dunk on the other end. That didn't look that great. Some of the shot selection at times can be bad because he gets going and he does heat checks. I understand that. I still have not seen enough. What I'm saying is I understand the pitfalls of leaning on freshmen. I understand that just because you see a talented freshman in spurts does not mean that this guy is bringing it every day in practice. Does not mean that this guy is, Todd Pettiford's not the best defender in the world, and he can get bullied a little bit. We saw Cooper Flagg got an and one on him. That was indicative, I think, of some of the fears Bruce Pearl might have. I understand all of these things. I don't need the argument. I don't need to explain to me of maybe why Todd Pettiford is not as great as I think he is, but at the same time, his offense and his ability to just completely change the dynamic of the game the second he enters the game, I think that outweighs everything, and I don't understand why he's not starting. I don't understand why he's playing 18 minutes in this game last night. He was in foul trouble, but I don't think that's what limited his minutes. I think they're just kind of like
Bruce Pearl said his defense is why he doesn't play down the stretch.
Yeah.
He at the end of the day, he is 6'1", 175. But at the end of the day, he's 4 of 8 from 3 and scored 20 points. 8 of 6.
He's a fucking bucket, dude. He's a big game player too. And when you're playing teams like Duke that are so good defensively, and you're playing in all these big games, you need guys that can just create something out of nothing, and he's one of those guys. I don't
understand why he doesn't play down the stretch. I don't understand why he doesn't start. But also what I don't understand, and I need an answer to, is he has been in double digits 4 times this year. He's hit multiple threes only 4 times this year. Duke, UNC, Iowa State, Houston.
Yeah.
Why are you going scoreless against Vermont and scoring 20 in Cameron Indoor?
Because they probably, and again, I've only watched those 4, so that's probably why I love Tahad Pettiford so much. Those are the 4 Auburn.
But why can't you do it against Kent State?
Because I don't think they need him to. But that's more to my point, that like I think in the big games you need guys that can. You can't just trust that the offensive sets you're going to run, the flex cuts are going to just suddenly lead to easy baskets. So there are moments where you're like, oh shit, there's 9 seconds left on the shot clock. We need something here. And
there's no doubt that he is the only one right now that is hitting the step back left-handed fadeaway 3. He's electric.
Yeah, like Baker Mazzara is good, Jani Broom good. Those would probably be the only other 2 guys I think on the roster. Like Miles Kelly's a good shooter. I like Auburn's team. But Tahad Pettiford is the only guy that could clear everybody out, and you just trust that like something's going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to score every time. That doesn't mean he's going to make the best decision, but he has, I've been enamored with the floor ceiling type talk, framing stuff that way. His ceiling is outrageous.
Correct.
His ceiling is outrageous, and every time I watch him play, I'm like, I mean, the Houston game was a great example of that he won that game for them. He single-handedly that was just like, that was an aha moment for me with Auburn. I remember doing the show. I came in here and I was like, man, I had questions about Auburn. I had questions about their guard play because that's been a problem in recent years. But this kid Tahad Pettiford, holy shit! In the second half against Houston, just busted the game wide open. Gets up and down. Houston has no answer for them. Houston wants to set their defense. They can't. This guy's just running around, dribbling around, making plays, getting out in transit. Like they're just like, what the fuck? We weren't prepared for this guy. And I think that wrinkle that he brings, hopefully, the silver lining for Auburn losing to Duke, and nobody expected Auburn to run the table. They're playing an outrageous schedule. Like Auburn should not fall. I don't even think Auburn should fall in the poll. I think Auburn should like stay number 2. I think Duke should like move up to 3. I think it's Tennessee, Auburn, Duke maybe is how I would have it. Like Duke, even though they beat them, I would still, given what Auburn has done to this point, I still feel like Auburn is very, very good, obviously. But maybe a silver lining. In a game where Denver Jones goes 0 for 4, doesn't. I know he had 4 assists, but doesn't do a whole lot. He plays 28 minutes. He's good defensively. He's not out there to score. I understand that. Bruce Pearl's with his team every day. He practices every day. He sees the habits that Tahad Pettiford has. Maybe the drills. He's lackadaisical. These are theories I have because every time I've watched Auburn, this isn't hyperbole. I do believe that Tahad Pettiford is the most talented player they have, and they have Jani Broom, who might win National Player of the Year.
Yeah, something's not adding up. When you have 2 starters not score any points, and I know there's other ways to impact the game, but every time that the casual fan or the big game fan has watched Auburn this year, you walk away thinking,
yeah,
damn, that Pettiford kid's legit.
Yeah.
And then they take him out at the end of the game,
yeah,
and then they don't start him. I don't know. It's interesting. I want to know where his head's at, honestly, because he's out there playing 18 minutes, lighting up the scoreboard.
20 points in 18 minutes last night.
And then coach is like, all right, game's on the line. Denver Jones, get back in.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree that I guess the way to say that is I do agree. That he's not great defensively.
Right.
He's not. Like in college coaches, especially, old school guys like Bruce Pearl, like that is a point of emphasis, and that is like that's a tale as old as time. Is like a freshman has all the talent in the world, but until he shows me that he wants to do the little things and get dirty and fucking get down in a stance and take pride on the other end of the floor, I don't know, man. I can't reward it. Like maybe that's what's going on. I assume that is what's going on. I mean, that's what Bruce Pearl's saying, but I think you got to be. I think his offensive talent. I said it. I just think his offensive talent is just far outweighs the liabilities defensively, and you can kind of scheme around that, and you can trust that like the rest of the guys you have out with the length and athleticism Auburn can put on the floor. If it's Tahad Pettiford and 4 other dudes now against a team like Duke, I guess I get that. It is, I'm talking myself in circles because against a team like Duke, it is harder because they have so much talent that they can exploit you, and that was kind of happening. They were picking on him a little bit, but I'm not speaking so much about last night. I'm just speaking about this general trend of every single time I watch Auburn, Tahad Pettiford balls out and he only plays like 15 to 20 minutes, it seems like. And I'm like, what is going on? All right, is this going to happen the rest of the season, or is there going to be a moment like in the middle of SEC play where we flip the switch and now Tahad Pettiford's playing 32 minutes and they're running the offense through him? Because that's what if that's the case, I have to imagine Auburn national. I mean, they're already very good, but like I think that is the last that's the last piece of the puzzle. It's like, how do we get Tahad Pettiford to play 30+ minutes?
I'm interested. I would love to know where Bruce Pearl's head's at, his head's at, because is this really something where like in practice every day? It's making me assume that like he's not a practice player. It's making me assume that like he doesn't want to play defense.
Yeah.
We don't see that because every time we see him, he's freaking awesome. But it's making me assume that there is a reason that Bruce Pearl, who's with the team every day, knows that Mark Titus and Tate don't know as to why he doesn't play in these moments.
What would Coach Tate do about this? About a player that
I'm interested.
Defensive liability, but offensive.
It's tough to put this dude on the bench. At the end of the day, here's a little quote for you: 5 nickels don't always equal a quarter.
Whoa.
Okay, 5 nickels don't. So when you have a quarter on your bench, put him in the game.
Put the quarter in the whoa.
Like my point is this: if you look at this Auburn team, and I think they're still the number 1 team in the country. I still think they should be. They have the best wins. They're 1 loss, and now everyone except Tennessee has a loss. Is at Cameron Indoor against the most talented team. My point is that they still don't have the biggest recruits, the biggest talent. They have one. Tahad Pettiford is their like highly ranked guy. He's their talent guy. Get him in the game.
Get him in the game. I agree. The other side, Duke. So Isaiah Evans. This was the Isaiah Evans breakout game. Another freshman that played 16 minutes and took over the game. Tahad Pettiford and Isaiah Evans played a combined 34 minutes. In a 40-minute game, they played a combined 34 minutes, and they scored 38 points, the two of them, these 2 freshmen. So Isaiah Evans is a kid that I don't pay attention to recruiting that much, but I also suspiciously know a lot of names in each recruiting class, and it finds its way to me, we'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know Isaiah Evans' backstory super well, but he was a name that I just kept hearing about, that he's a North Carolina kid. He's a local kid that's an absolute bucket, but there were questions about like how much playing time he was going to get this season and how he was going to fit into the rotation. But I think like a lot of Duke fans expected him to be playing. They didn't expect the DNPs that we're seeing in these big games. And so I was working on the impression, like when we're watching Kentucky and we're watching Kansas, I was like, maybe they're going to redshirt him. Maybe he's hurt and we don't know it. Maybe there's something going on, because like the only games he's playing in is like he had a big game against, I think against Wofford. Was the big game before last night.
He did not touch the floor in Kentucky, Arizona, or Kansas.
Yeah.
Did not touch the floor.
He 3 DNPs on the season, and they weren't injury or anything else. It was coach's decision. Just does not play. But as we've seen in the Duke losses, the defense is never going to be a problem with Duke. Even instances where they're giving up a few. Like out of the gate, Auburn was hitting shots, and like, but you're never going to panic about Duke's D. Like there are times where they're going to give up some points, but you're never like worried. Oh shit, maybe this defense has been figured out. They're just too tall, too athletic, and they play too hard. You don't have to worry about Duke's defense. Where Duke's going to get in trouble, if they do get in trouble, is offensively. And we've talked about it in the 2 losses they've had. Just sort of the creativity offensively, especially in clutch time. Like what is the identity for Duke offensively? Is it just give the ball to Cooper Flagg, give the ball to Tyrese Proctor, and get out of the way? Is it like what are we going to do out there? And I felt like in the 2 losses they had, that is what doomed them was the shooting, was the offensive explosion. It felt like a grind, which is going to happen in college basketball, and that is literally the one fear I have with Duke, and I've said it a million times, is when you have a team full of freshmen and you get into these grinded games where you as a team are like 2 for 10 from the 3-point line at halftime. What adjustments are you going to make? How do you figure this out on the fly? And all of that is to say, you have a secret weapon on the bench, and Isaiah Evans, who hit 6 threes in the first half. I have to admit, like Duke fans who, as they're watching the Kentucky and the Kansas game, I have to imagine they're like, yes, dude, this is what I was saying. Like, why can't we throw this guy in for 5 minutes at a time? And just like when you're bricking shots against Kansas, throw him in there and just see what happens. Now, it's the same story with Tahad Pettiford, where I think John Shire will tell you he's frail. I think his nickname is literally Slim. I think Isaiah Evans, they just call him Slim. He's not a.
He's 6'6", 175.
He's taller than Pettiford, but he's a very skinny boy, and he's not. He's young, and he's not like playing big time college basketball. You do not want to throw a young, skinny guy who's not, unless you're like Kevin Durant level of talent. You don't want to throw that guy into the fire like that. But I don't know. Last night, I think if you're a Duke fan, you're like that's what I've been waiting to see. From Isaiah Evans, like because I have heard the chatter from Duke fans, like, when are we going to see Isaiah Evans? Can we just throw him out there? They've been watching the games that you and I probably haven't been watching, like the Wofford game. They're like, this guy's a bucket. Why aren't we seeing him in the big games? We finally saw him last night. Again, it was only 16 minutes, but he hit 6 threes, had 18 points at halftime. Completely. He didn't win the game for them, but like at a time where Auburn was.
So Auburn goes up 13-2 to start the game.
Yeah.
And if Isaiah Evans doesn't come in and hit 6 threes in the first half, Auburn extends that, and he doesn't necessarily win the game, but he kept them in the game so Cooper Flagg could go win them the game in the second half.
It felt that first half was setting up to feel like the Kentucky and the Kansas game. And John Shire was like, I'm going to break the glass in case of emergency here. I'm going to throw Isaiah Evans in. We're going to see what happens. And he's a bucket, dude. Now I don't expect him to hit 6 threes every half of basketball he plays, but you cannot come out of that game and not have Isaiah Evans. He can't have any more DNPs on the season.
I agree.
He can't.
And he doesn't need to be this focal point, this face of the team, but this just shows how much talent Duke has if they can have a dude that's tracking DNPs come in and hit 6 threes. And it's not like he's like the little white dude that got lucky and chucked up prayers and it was like a magical night.
Then they were leaving him wide open.
He's a 5-star recruit, top 10 player in the country coming in, and they can just bring him in and say, hey, we need jump started. I think John Shire saw that last night, and I think he kind of earned his stripes to play in these games.
And this is why Duke I think Duke is one, they are the favorite to win the national title, but I won't be able to quit Duke all season. And it's not because of the name on the front of the jersey or because of the hype around Cooper Flagg or whatever other thing. If you're a Duke hater, you'd be like, you're sucking off Duke because of. No, we're sucking off Duke because the talent is outrageous, and they have these aces up their sleeve in Isaiah Evans, and I know they've lost 2 games. Like that's where the way you talk about who the best team is, I feel like there's like 3 different conversations. It's like who should be ranked number 1 right now, which I believe should be Tennessee. They're undefeated and they're crushing everybody. There is. Who should be, if the NCAA tournament started today, who should be the number 1 overall seed, which I believe should be Auburn.
Okay.
Auburn has the best resume. Auburn has earned the right to be the number 1 overall seed. And then there's who do you think would win the NCAA tournament if it was played today? Maybe not today. Who is going to, I guess.
I was going to say, Duke changes. Duke gets better because they're young.
Yeah, it's the, as you're forecasting the season, who do you think should be the favorite to win the NCAA tournament? And Vegas backs it up, but it's Duke. It should be Duke because, again, that's not the hype. It's not the hype machine at work. It is when you watch this team play and you see how many weapons they have, and you see guys like Caleb Foster has now been relegated to the bench, and in some ways you might be like, all right, that might be the last we see of meaningful Caleb Foster. He plays well. He was good in this game, but like this signals to me that they're just trying to shake up some lineups, and maybe Caleb Foster is going to be the 6th, the 7th man, whatever. I mean, what are we talking about here? Caleb Foster's your 7th man. That's outrageous.
There's 2 names that we've talked about many times on this show that we haven't even said yet in this game, and that's Con Knipple and Malawach. I didn't think either of them played well last night. I think we might have jinxed Con Knipple.
Con Knipple's been
we saw him score 22 points in his first game against Maine, and I know we declared on this show he will be the leading scorer of this team.
The leading scorer of the team.
He hasn't even snipped. He's got 11.
Yeah.
He shot the ball 3 times last night.
Yeah.
To go from 5,
which I weirdly think might be a good thing. Like, because he was gunning a lot.
He was.
So maybe we reined it in. And
you told him that.
Maybe they're Goldilocksing. Yeah, let's run with it.
It's a verb.
Con Knipple right now that he's shooting too much. Now we pull him all the way back. He's shooting too little.
And then we'll middle him.
And then we'll middle him in January,
9
February.
to 12 shots a game.
Yeah, and we'll figure that out.
But yeah, I mean, he was someone that early in the season we were saying the freshmen had to play well for them to win. Now Cooper Flagg was unbelievable last night. And I think that he kind of the Janai Broom Player of the Year situation. We can't continue to do Player of the Year every show.
But also
last night,
we can, dude.
Cooper Flagg just became the favorite to be
I'll say
Player of the Year.
this is the most fun college basketball start to a college basketball season, and really it is since the Zion year probably. It's since Zion and the Zion Duke team went to Maui and lost to Rui Hachimura and Gonzaga. But you're still like you came away from that game like, oh my God, Duke is that Duke team is really good, but also this Gonzaga team's really good. I remember that year being so excited in November, December. I think this is the most fun I'm having watching college basketball since then.
We had like very hyped up Duke games early in the season. Then we had the best feast week ever, the best Maui ever. And then last night, just this random Wednesday in December, was the best night of the season.
So many great games. But yeah, Duke is that last night is why everyone's so high on Duke, and these are the two. I looked it up this morning because every so often I have the thought, and I'm not getting in the mix with the odds makers. I don't live and breathe it, but I do check from time to time. I get on DraftKings and see what they got to say. And I'm watching last night, and I had the thought that I've had again like 5 different times this season, which is like, are these the best 2 teams in the country? Sure enough, that's what the odds makers say. Duke and Auburn are number 1, number 2 for national championship odds right now.
I do have a Duke question for you, because the story about Duke, and we've seen it with our eyes, is that they were talented enough to beat anyone, but then down the stretch, Cooper choked a couple times, Knipple choked.
Yeah.
Does last night do anything to that narrative for you, or because it was at home and they never really had that moment, even though it was a close game throughout? They never really had that moment, or do you feel like they've grown from that?
It might be too early to say definitively that they've grown from it, but I'm not at a point yet where it's like, it's a tie game with a minute left, and I'm like, Duke's gonna find a way to pull this out. No, I think it's premature for that, but obviously this is a massive win, and this is the kind of game that they've lost so far this season. So like for them to win it, it's huge. I think the freshmen. I'll say this about, because like as you're like nitpicking Duke and trying to figure out where this goes wrong, because again, like they are very clearly the most talented team in the country. But we've said that about Duke. We've said that about Kentucky through the years. There are a lot of teams where you've said that, and they have not won the national championship. They haven't even made the Final Four. So if you're trying to figure out how this goes wrong, the reliance on the freshmen is something that could be a concern. Now, I will say that at this point in early December, I have seen enough to believe that this group of freshmen that they have, when you look at the two freshman heavy teams that won national titles in 2015 Duke, 2012 Kentucky, this freshman class, I feel like they're more talented than those 2 classes. I feel comfortable saying that. Now Anthony Davis is the best player.
Right.
I think Anthony Davis is better than Cooper Flagg, but I think in terms of the overall class, like I feel pretty comfortable saying this class of freshmen at Duke, especially when you have an Isaiah Evans.
I was going to say, you would have said this 2 days ago, and then some new dude
they're just like flipping over couch cushions and finding other freshmen who are awesome. So when you contextualize it in that way, and then you start like wanting to poke holes, and you're like, I just don't know if this freshman class is going to be able to win 6 games in March. Well, we have 2 instances of less talented freshman classes winning national championships. And I guess in the end, like that's all that's going to matter. And if this team at the end of winning the national championship is all that matters, if this team loses in the Sweet 16, then we're going to retroactively be like, I guess they weren't as talented as the 2015 Duke team. But as it stands right now, I think when you like the Justice Winslow and Okafor and Jones, and I think Grayson was in that class. Like I think this group's more talented than that. And then I mean, Kid Gilchrist, and who was good in college but couldn't shoot. It was Marcus Teague. It was Anthony Davis. And was that it? Was it just like those 3 freshmen on Kentucky? I'm trying to remember. I know those 3 guys started, but I can't remember who else was in that class. Like Anthony Davis, like I said, was obviously the best player. Like, I think he's obviously better than Cooper Flagg. Maybe it's not that obvious though to some people, but to me, Anthony Davis was that season of college basketball was unfucking believable. But I'm saying as a whole class, to have Maluach, to have Knipple.
Their class was Anthony Davis, Kid Gilchrist, Marcus Teague, and Kyle Wilcher. That was
Kyle Wilcher, that's right. Yeah, but he didn't really play that much and then transferred. So yeah, Duke is, as the season wears on, I think you're going to find fewer and fewer holes to poke into Duke. Now they probably will have the random ass game at NC State or something that they lose, or they go on the road to Virginia, and Virginia's
Pitt,
not even that. Yeah, they lose at Pitt, who's not bad, but they looked bad last night. There'll be random games like that where you'll be like, maybe we were wrong about Duke. But I think over the totality of the season, they are. I'll put it this way: I don't think there will probably not be any point this season. I don't think that Duke will not be the favorite to win the national championship. I don't think their odds are.
Oh wow!
I think they will. I think they will be the favorite the entire season. Quick break to talk about our friends at DraftKings. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Will LA repeat? I'm going to say no. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the team that's been eliminated will not. There's sure to be rim-rattling slams and no-look passes that bring the crowd to their feet. Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. First time, here's something special for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Titus, that's code Titus, Titus, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. When you bet just $5 only on DraftKings, the crown is yours.
We keep saying, who's the Power 4 heaviest favorite? I'm officially ready to declare Duke is going to win the ACC by 3, 4, 5 games.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because Carolina looks bad.
Yeah, we can pivot away from Duke Auburn specifically and talk broader this ACC SEC challenge. You're right. The ACC won 2 games. They played 16. The ACC was 2-14. The ACC against the SEC. Imagine going back. How many years would you have to go back to have someone? I
had this conversation last night.
Go back. I don't think you have to go back any years. You could do it right. You could just say right now.
If you would have asked just a casual, who wins the ACC SEC basketball challenge, I think if you just polled America, ACC would have the majority vote.
Yeah.
And it was 14-2.
Yeah.
And Kentucky's one of the losses.
Kentucky was one of the losses. Yeah, at Clemson. Clemson team is interesting. Shefflin is he's a big body, man, and they were good last year, and he's a problem in the ACC, and I think they're going to obviously be the same. And I'm not just basing this off of how this ACC SEC challenge went, but I think Clemson's going to be the second best. That's kind of been my question with the ACC is who's the second best team going to be? Because Louisville coming into the season, there's a Louisville resurgence going on. North Carolina, I think, was the pick in the preseason, but sure. I don't think North Carolina's good. I think North Carolina's now 4-4. It's easy to say because they're 4-4, but I think if you're forecasting a bounce back from North Carolina, good luck to you.
They have the most obvious flaw of any of these what were supposed to be top teams. Their front court is just not on par with what North Carolina has had or what you need to win in college basketball.
Yeah. And they the way they're going to win is by hitting threes, and they're not consistently great at shooting. They have shooters on the floor, so you it's not fair to say they can't shoot, but yet like last night is the example. They go 5 for 28 from 3. They will win 0% of their games doing that. 0%. And that's the issue in North Carolina is they don't have a plan B. Their plan A, B, C, D, E, and F is their guards are hot. And if that doesn't work, they're fucked. And I expect them to make the NCAA tournament, and the ACC is not going to be good, and they're going to stack up wins in the conference and all that. But yeah, I mean there was an expectation. Carolina went to Memphis. RJ Davis didn't play in that exhibition at the start of the season. An exhibition. I guess what we're learning is exhibitions don't matter. Which I don't want to believe because they need to matter in the preseason. Damn it, I need stuff to talk about. But you got Gonzaga losing to USC in the preseason, and then USC scores 30 points against St. Mary's, and you're like, oh, maybe this USC team isn't really that good. But yeah, Carolina. To bring it back to Carolina, you watch the Memphis exhibition. Seth Trimble was out. Was so good. Elliot Cadeau was good. The big guys, obviously aren't going to be as good as Armando Bacot, but you don't need them to be. And because you're all right, if Trimble can play like this, and if they get RJ Davis back, their guards are going to be so good. They're just going to run everything through their cards, and they're going to they're just going to run up and down and hit so many threes, and they're going to be so fun to watch. And then you forget that RJ Davis just has these nights where he goes 7 for 24. And that's it, and that's not an anomaly. That's just who this guy is.
I'm not sold. You said Carolina is a tournament team, and I agree that first of all the Carolina brand carries a lot of weight. Second of all, their 4 losses are Kansas, Auburn, Alabama, Michigan State. But I'm not sold. Their 4 wins are Elon, American, Hawaii, and Dayton at the buzzer.
Right.
I'm not sold that they have the recipe where they're just going to win these games in the ACC. Their front court is bad, and if RJ Davis shoots how he does, they're going to lose games.
Yeah, and it's not the problem with Carolina is there's a lot of teams that you would look at last night's game, and you would see that RJ Davis goes 7 for 24. These aren't exaggerated numbers. I'm reading the box score right now. 1 for 11 from 3. Meanwhile, Elliot Cadeau goes 0 for 4, scores 1 point. There are a lot of teams that you would look at that and be like, flush that tape down. Let's move on. Like that was a weird game. You know, we just weren't hitting. Let's move forward. Unfortunately, with North Carolina, that is a pretty common sight. That is far too common, I'll say. And that's why I would worry about them moving forward, because there is no plan B, and there is no. It's not like, all right, we're not like RJ's cold and Elliot Cadeau is out to lunch. Like, what are we gonna do? Let's dump it into Armando Bacot. Let's run some secondary break and get some easy buckets that way. It's like they don't have any other plan than let RJ shoot 20 times a game and hope he's on.
Yeah, they're in trouble. I think the ACC as a whole is I think this is like a 3, 4, 5 bid league.
Dude, it could be, at
max.
Yeah,
and Carolina's going to be 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I mean, the only other option is like Seth Trimble. I guess once every 5 or 6 games, you hope that he just goes for like 25 out of nowhere, because he can do that. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Is Bama back? Is that the other? I mean, the Wrightsell, I guess that news is broken since we last did a show. Latrell Wrightsell is out for the year, torn Achilles. Best shooter on Bama's team, and it's a team full of great shooters, but he's the guy that for a team that ebbs and flows on the 3-point line, he was the calming presence.
He was the consistent one.
He was the calming, like, we need to see some go through. Let's give it to Wrightsell and let him hit. Now he's out for the year, but they respond to that news, getting a 15-point win at a the jury's still out on how good this North Carolina team is, but traditionally a tough place to play, a team that's hard to beat. Mark Sears played well.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Early on too. I think he listens to the show. I think that's what that showed. He heard you declare that his National Player of the Year was dead, and he said, "I'm gonna go."
Not so fast,
right?
Unfortunately, he did it on a night where the 2 candidates balled out.
True.
The top 2.
No one was watching.
Yeah.
This.
No, I'm Mark Sears. We were all watching Jedi Broom and Cooper Flagg also score 20+ points.
Yeah, do it again.
Yeah.
But no, I learned a lot about Alabama last night. I actually think it confirmed what we had been saying, what the Rico Boscos of the world had been saying. They are so deep.
Very deep.
I thought losing to the ACL, I thought that was going to be detrimental. Not necessarily game by game, but over the long haul, he was their consistent shooter. The fact that they're able to lose him and then continue to put up 94 points, and they just found deeper and deeper options last night, I was impressed.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. That's kind of what we talked about with the Illinois game, was Mark Sears scoring 0 and they still scored 100. So yeah, there are concerns with Bama, but when you look across the entire roster and how much talent is there and how deep they go and how much Nate Oates trusts going deep, because there are a lot of, I mean, we just talked about John Shire doing it with the 5-star freshman. There are teams that have talent, or coaches that have talent, that don't necessarily want to turn to certain guys, and they're like, not your time. You go ahead and sit there and wait. And Nate Oates is like, no, it's all your time. I brought all of you guys here to play. So yeah, Bama has a bunch of different weapons that can beat you. I mean, shit, you just look at that starting lineup, like Grant Nelson. I frame it this way: like, how many guys on your team do you have that are capable of going for like 25 on any given night? And boy, Bama has a lot of them.
Right.
Bama has
most teams
They lost one for the season, but Sears is that guy, Philon's that guy, Amori's that guy, Grant Nelson's that guy. Yeah.
We talked about them on this show about just under a month ago, and we read their upcoming slate of Purdue, Illinois, Houston, Rutgers, Oregon, North Carolina, Creighton. And we said this is going to be a bumpy road. Like, can they come out of this? You said they're going to drop a game or two. It looks like they're going to come out of this about 6-2 and be about 10-2 overall. That's a rough schedule to play before the SEC. This team's going to be just fine.
They're going to be fine. The SEC is, I think the gap. Here's another broad observation I have. I think the gap between the SEC and the rest of the country right now is as wide of a gap between conferences as I can ever remember.
Really?
I think it's not even close. I think the SEC is like not even kind of close. I don't even know. In the same way you're trying to figure out who the second best team in the ACC is, which Clemson fans are like, what do you mean we're trying to figure it out? It's us. I think the if you're looking at conferences as a whole, I don't even think it's worth trying to figure out who the second best conference is. The Big 12 is probably the answer, but I don't even think it's. If I was doing, basically what I'm saying is if I was doing a conference power rankings right now, I wouldn't even list a second conference because by putting them at number 2, it's going to give people the false idea that they're close to being number 1.
So how
they're
you
not even close to number 1.
You would start it at SEC 1 and then you'd go to like 4.
4, yes.
So
yes.
1 and then 4.
I don't want the Big 12 to believe that it's close. And if you put the Big 12 at 2, they're going to be like, yeah, we're right there.
Yeah, neck and neck.
We're neck and neck. You are not. It's not even close. And the Big 12 has obviously a bunch of great programs, and I think when you look at the current land, the last like 5 years or whatever the current the 30,000-foot view of all this stuff, you would say the Big 12 is the best basketball conference probably right now at this moment in time in college basketball. But this season, it's the SEC.
Well, so it's the SEC is the leader. I will push back a little. You said you're not necessarily sure who 2 would be. So Big 12, Big 10. The Big 12 does still have 3 teams that absolutely 100% will be around and contending for a national title in Houston, Iowa State, and Kansas.
Yeah.
So the Big 12 is top heavy. The SEC is a gauntlet.
The SEC is top heavy and also extremely deep.
Yes.
It has both.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Well said.
Yeah, like the Big 12 does have national title contenders. The SEC also has Auburn, who could win the national championship, and we believe is the best team in the country. Or however you want to frame it, but they should have been the number 1 team in the country before last night. Tennessee, who's going to be the number 1 team in the country. Alabama, who I don't know how to like they might by the end of the season they might have Duke's going to have the highest ceiling. How do you frame Alabama to say like they're the deepest team in the country? Maybe Alabama's good as fuck.
Right.
Can I just do it that way? I was trying to find a more elegant way to say it. But
put that in that category.
Alabama. I mean, we just said they have. You might need 2 hands to count the number of guys they have on that roster that could score 20 points on any given night. Kentucky, tough one at Clemson, but Kentucky, I do still worry about Kentucky's top end NBA talent that might end up biting them. But Kentucky is we've seen from Kentucky enough to say that they're Final Four caliber. Florida is a fucking machine right now. That's 5 teams that believe they can win the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you look at the rest of the SEC, and you're looking at like you look at the bottom of the SEC. Arkansas is going to be one of the worst teams in the SEC. Arkansas is very good. Arkansas is not great. Arkansas is not. I don't think they're Final Four good. I don't think Arkansas. There is very much an expectation for Arkansas to make the tournament comfortably, and I don't think that's unreasonable. And they are probably going to finish near the bottom of the SEC.
I'm looking at this SEC lineup and wondering, like, where are you drawing the line? Like, Arkansas is a great example. Mississippi State last night beat the absolute shit out of Pitt, who, if you would ask us a couple days ago, we would have been like, oh, yeah, Pitt's a solid team. Texas is 7-1. Oklahoma's 8-0. This is top to bottom loaded.
It's loaded, dude. It's loaded. And I'm curious. I'm trying not to overreact to one ACC SEC challenge, but is this? I mean, it's hard not to think this is indicative of where the sport is going. Like, it's hard not to think that like I don't think this is a blip.
Just means more down there.
I do think that with the landscape of football and super conferences and all that, if I'm an old school ACC guy. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very worried about the future of that conference.
I would say if you look at the prospects of is this a down year for the ACC, I think Duke will always be there, obviously. I think Carolina's going to find out they need to get in the portal and get dudes for next year. But then I'm thinking, who do you expect? Louisville should probably be back. I think Pat Coe's going to do a good job. But then talk to me about –
but is Louisville going to go ahead.
Just my point is, like, when you're looking at, like, the future of the conference, is Wake Forest ever going to be back? Are we going to talk about Miami? No, we're going to be talking about these SEC schools in this super power conference they have.
Yeah. And the ACC schools don't have the money that the SEC schools are going to have. They're not going to have the media deals that the SEC schools are going to have. And the SEC, like Greg Sankey, however many years ago, it was like 5, 6, 7 years ago, just suddenly the SEC as a whole was just like, why don't we just care about basketball? And then if we care about basketball, we can have world domination. We already have football. We already have baseball, which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but is something.
But they have it. That is
profitable property for in some ways. They have the softball. They have they kind of had everything.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have basketball. They were letting Kentucky and then like Florida or Tennessee on any given year. That was like carrying the basketball for them. And they're like, what if we just like actually kind of cared? And then across the conference, they were hiring all the like Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates, and Rick Barnes goes to Tennessee. And they started like consistently across the entire conference caring about basketball. And now you're seeing the results of that. And I don't think they're going away as a conference, but also I think the ACC. That's my overreaction from this ACC SEC challenge is like that wasn't a coincidence. Mm-hmm. That wasn't just like the ACC had bad matchups and because that'll happen sometimes. You could argue that like the ACC got the bad matchups, and if Carolina got to play Arkansas, they probably would have beat them, and there's a way you could have tweaked this to where the ACC might have won I don't think there is. I don't think there's any way the ACC would have won this challenge. And on top of that, I don't think
the ACC could have made their own matchups. They still would have
don't think they would have won. And on top of that, I don't think moving forward we should ever expect the ACC to win this again. And that pains me to say it because I appreciate the history of the ACC, but I mean you brought up Louisville, like Pat Kelsey's going to bring him back, but is he going to bring him back? Yes, we know Pat Kelsey's going to bring him back, but is he going to bring them back? Are they going to be?
I think when I say bring them back, it's because they were terrible.
Yeah,
that's what.
They're going to bring. Yeah. He's going to bring him back to relevancy for sure. Should we expect Louisville to ever be like? Should we ever expect Louisville to be the Rick Pitino Louisville?
And you
Denny Crum Louisville?
Obviously, you can't say it off one game, like the future of the conference isn't off one game, but I do think it's funny that we're sitting here saying is Louisville going to be back and Tennessee beat them by 100
dude.
this year.
Louisville does have money though. I will say that like if it is ultimately just who's got money and who doesn't, and that's how you're going to compete moving forward. Louisville basketball does have money, so maybe there's hope yet. But the ACC.
I find it interesting that it was a 14-2. ACC lost 14-2, but they got Kentucky and they got Auburn.
Yeah,
which we would have maybe said were the two best teams in the.
That's true.
In the SEC,
they got the number 2 and number 4 teams. So I guess if you spin it that way, the ACC didn't have any top 5 teams lose.
Did the ACC actually win?
If you count up top 5 upsets, ACC had 2 and SEC had 0.
Wow.
So, yeah, they were big game hunting.
Credit to the ACC. A good show.
The Mark Titus Show is brought to you by Cars.com. Want to find a trustworthy dealer? Want to find dealership reviews from shoppers like you? Cars.com offers the latest research, shopping tools, and dealership reviews to help every shopper find the perfect car. And buying a car can be a hassle for a lot of people. A lot of people out there think that is the number one stressor in life. It's like if it's not buying a house, it's buying a car. It's the one thing that is just an absolute pain in the ass. And for all those people, I will say this. You obviously just haven't learned about Cars.com yet, and we can fix that right now. You go to Cars.com, you can shop by monthly payment or filter by features to find the cars that fit your budget and needs. Visit Cars.com to start exploring your next possibility today. Cars.com. I wanted to do some cross-offs before I forget this.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to organize my list a little bit better. I made a spreadsheet.
Oh, good.
We've reached the spreadsheet of all this. So here are teams I'm crossing off this week.
Okay.
All right. I'm going in alphabetical order because that's how I listed them out here. I'm crossing off Ball State. So I added. I should have said this. I'm adding. I already had if you lose back to back by 20 plus.
Yep.
That was a rule because I said if you're losing, if you're getting blown out in back to back games, that means you either don't have talent or don't have heart. And either way, or maybe both. and you need those to win a national championship. So I'm crossing you off. If you score fewer than 40 points in a game and lose, that was it. The lose is the important part because there are situations where it could be a rock fight and you could win 39-36. Don't recommend it. Still going to think it's a gross basketball game and still not going to exactly love the idea of you winning the championship, but I'll let it slide. If you lose by 25 to a team that lost by 25, did I already add that one? Is this a new one? I can't remember. I know I had texted you about it, but I don't remember if I said
I think this is
show.
new to the show.
I think this might be new to the show. If you lose by 25 points to a team that has lost by 25 points. So if you have a direct transitive loss by 50 or more. So if you've...
That's dangerous. Let me tell you
that. It's dangerous. But I think... The idea I got from this was Indiana. I'm watching Indiana lose to Louisville in Feast Week, and I knew that Louisville just lost to Tennessee by 1,000. And then Louisville's beating the shit out of Indiana. And I was like, Indiana can't be like, you can't lose to a team that you can't be blown out by a team that just got blown out. So I was like, if you lose by 25 to a team that lost by 25, but then Indiana ultimately salvaged it and didn't lose by 25 to Louisville. So Indiana's technically not.
No,
that was the inspiration. They did?
They lost by 28.
Oh no, I got it wrong then.
The next,
I went back and I looked at Louisville, Tennessee,
and they didn't lose
by 20. That's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was.
So whoever, if you lose to Indiana by 25, you are out now.
Yeah,
they're officially. You can't lose to Indiana by 25.
If you lose to Indiana by 25, you're crossed off. So that was another thing I added, and then just in general to trim the fat a little bit, if you lose to a 300 plus KenPom team, there's 364 teams in Division I. So if you lose to one of the bottom 65? Yeah, 65.
Yeah.
You lose to one of the bottom 65 teams, according to KenPom, you're out. Like,
okay.
What are we doing?
That's fair.
You can't lose a game. Like you're not winning the national title. If you're capable of losing to a team that bad, you're not winning the national title. So with that being said, here's some teams I'm crossing off. Ball State, who is still on there, somehow lost to Detroit Mercy earlier in the season, who's 341st on KenPom at the time they lost. By the way, I'm doing it at the time they lost. So if you lose to a team that then falls into the
doesn't count.
I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about at the time you played. So yeah, Ball State lost to Detroit Mercy. You can cross them off. Boston University lost to Wagner, who was 305 on KenPom at that time. Bowling Green lost to Bellarmine, who was 338. You can cross Bowling Green off. Cal State Fullerton lost by 30 to Colorado, who lost by 28 in Maui to Iowa State.
That'll get you.
Cal State Fullerton, you're out. 50. So if you have that's basically how you. If you can just do a direct transitive property, if there's only one step, and I can say that Cal State Fullerton would lose by 58 to Iowa State, you're out.
Listen, I gotta say this. I love the rule, and the reason makes sense. There was a big game last night that is officially poison, and that is Pitt lost by 33 to Mississippi State. Hey, Pitt, I don't want to see any funny business.
If Pitt beats Duke by 25, we're in trouble. We're going
but
to
a card laid is a card played, Titus. You made the rule.
Yep. Cleveland State lost to Morehead State. They were 306th on KenPom at that time, so we're crossing Cleveland State off. Duquesne lost to Hampton, who was 301.
Sorry, Drew Joyce.
Eastern Michigan also lost to Detroit Mercy. Fordham lost to Manhattan, who was 320th. I'm crossing off Holy Cross, who lost by 26 to Virginia. And Virginia, of course, had lost by 25 to Tennessee. So Virginia is also a poison team as well. I guess we should make a list of the poison.
Yeah, we actually help.
We need a side list of all the teams that are poison. Long Beach State lost by 30 to San Francisco, who lost by 25 to Clemson. Clemson blew out San Francisco, who then blew out Long Beach State. So Long Beach State, you're out. Manhattan lost to Lemoyne, who was 337 on KenPom. So Manhattan crossing them off. Miami
out.
Hurricanes lost to Charleston Southern. Tate 317th on KenPom. The Hurricanes are out.
Where is Miami on KenPom right now? I'm just saying that's a big name.
Miami's a big name. No, that's one of the first big ones that we've crossed off. They're
94. That might be our okay.
No, we have Missouri is
okay. So
Missouri the highest. Hold on, let me see. Who's the highest? I think there might be another one coming. By the way, so let's shelf that and maybe come back.
I'm fine with Miami being out. Even though they just lost to Arkansas by 3 on Tuesday.
They lost to Arkansas by 3, but those are the rules. You lost to Charleston Southern. Miami's not winning the national championship. Montana State lost to Denver, who's 309 on KenPom. Niagara also lost to Detroit Mercy. How is Detroit? Wait a second. How is Detroit Mercy so low? Detroit Mercy's beating all these teams that are still on my national title list. But yeah.
It's a crazy game.
How's Detroit Mercy so low, dude? They're racking up W's. Pepperdine is 3-0. They lost to Fullerton.
No, don't cross them off.
Who's 304 on KenPom?
I thought that was our plan.
Oh, that's right. We wanted to leave Pepperdine on. Just
Well,
in case.
they still have to win.
They would still have to win the national title.
That's
for
the
us to
one
go
problem
there,
with our trip to Hawaii.
Yeah, hold on. Let's go through and let me finish this, and then we'll go through and look at the best case scenario for us.
Okay.
The best case scenario for us. Where's the best place to get tarred and feather? Seattle lost to Cal Poly, who is 329 on KenPom. Seton Hall lost to Monmouth. Bad loss. Frank the Tank was there. I think that was the Frank the Tank game, by the way.
He went to that?
Right? Cody, was Frank there? All right. That's her.
Cody's first. Cody announced.
Cody, you want to make an announcement or what?
What's up, guys? I'm producing.
Congratulations, Cody.
That's your announcement? That's it?
Sup, guys?
You're not gonna give the people more than that? You're not like excited for the opportunity, or like you've been dreaming of this day your whole life, or like it's a joy to work with
Cody, you drove to meet Titus at March Madness. This is
you're on your stand shit. You kind of were.
This is a great day.
Wait, yeah. I forgot about that.
Cody is taking over for TJ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna take over. TJ's still gonna be in the universe. Obviously,
He's still
he produces
the head of the show, basically.
Yeah.
Just like doing the producing.
Yeah, TJ just has a ton on his plate with mostly sports and the yak, and it's too much to ask him to do all three shows.
So TJ's
what?
You got me with that one. You got me with that one. You got me with that one.
I was being serious. TJ, it's a lot easier to sit down and just bullshit. And TJ was producing all the shows and clipping up stuff and all that. So
fair enough. So
Cody, we're gonna give our boy Cody a shot.
TJ is a clear Rutgers guy. We go to TJ for our Rutgers stuff. Cody, who do you have a specific team?
Syracuse.
You're a Syracuse guy.
Who's ass, dude? All our teams are ass.
Yeah.
I think the timing of TJ leaving the show. He's not leaving the show, but he's just not. TJ's doing what Hank kind of did with Pardon My Take.
Great career move.
Right? You know, like, is that a good analogy, Cody?
Sure. I don't know.
This isn't going as well as
TJ would never.
Yeah,
hit us
TJ
with
would
sure.
Never,
I don't
know. Yeah, he's still gonna be a part of the show. He's just not gonna be every single day on the show, I guess. But the timing's interesting. The Buckeyes do play Rutgers on Saturday. I wonder if, and both of us need to win the game. Bad. But yeah, TJ is out. TJ out. Cody in. There we go.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Back to the list.
So Frank the Tank wasn't. I thought the Seton Hall game. I thought that was the game Frank went to and was like, I don't.
There's no way of knowing.
They do the. I think Seton Hall does the. They have some sort of mechanism like bang the anvil or fucking shoot the cannon.
Yeah,
or
like smash the guitar, like something you do before the game.
Yeah, to get the crowd going. I think Frank pushed the button and then they lost to Monmouth. And
I'm trying to Google it to see. All I can find so far is episode 84 of the Mark Titus show. Frank the Tank joins to talk Seton Hall.
Yeah, Seton Hall had a big win over. Was it UConn? Did they beat UConn? Did they bring Frank on after they beat UConn?
Yeah, they beat UConn.
Yeah, they beat UConn.
Yeah, you both are wearing Santa hats.
That's right. Yeah, we did a Christmas episode with Frank the Tank last year. No disrespect to Frank, who I love, but I don't think we're going to be having Frank on this year to talk Seton Hall basketball. I don't think he will be coming on.
Unless they beat UConn.
I don't anticipate Seton Hall having too many high points this year. Also crossing off Toledo.
The Rockets?
Lost to Oakland by 33. Oakland was already crossed off. And Oakland lost by 44 points to Boise State. That is brutal.
80-point aggregate.
Brutal. We're crossing out. Here's a big name. USC. The Trojans out.
They just played Oregon close last night.
They also just scored 36 points against St. Mary's.
And lost.
Of course they lost.
They didn't
lost.
sneak that one
36
out.
points against St. Mary's. The USC team that played Oregon close, that beat Gonzaga in a exhibition, I think it was televised. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't watch it, but I saw the score. Might have been on one of the last Pac-12 network games on a Samsung refrigerator. But USC, yeah, lose by 36 to St. Mary's. You got it, or scored 36.
Coach
and lose
Muss
to St. Mary's. You got to be out. And then finally, last team I'm crossing off this week, VMI lost by 27 to Davidson, who had already lost to Arizona by 33. So they're a transitive property. They're out. So now
that's a good exodus right there.
We crossed off a lot. We're down to like one. I think there's like one. I think we're under 150 now. About at 150.
Okay.
And we got to start crossing some more off, which this could be the part of the show. And I guess we could end the show with this because I want to kind of end everything with this, where we pivot to the Buckeyes. Now, one thing I said when you started coming on the show often, one thing I said I did not want this show to be was an Ohio State basketball show.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to guard against that. I wanted to make sure that we are serving a national audience, that the people at home that are watching games last night, that we come talk about the games that they were watching. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that most people were not watching Ohio State, Maryland. They were watching Carolina, Bama, Baylor, Gonzaga, Duke, Auburn, Kansas, Creighton. Like, there were so many better games going on. I'm going to go ahead and guess that they were watching that. At the same time, people love it when we're sad.
Mm-hmm.
And also when shit hits the fan, if you don't address it, then everyone thinks you're a coward.
Yeah, we're
pussy.
skirting it.
Yes. So even though it wasn't a game on everybody's radar, we probably do have to talk about Ohio State scoring 17 points in the first half in Maryland. We were down 50-17. It was not – the feel of the game was not even that close. Like, it felt like we were down by more. We watched later in the night a freshman on Duke who had 3 DNPs on the season scored more points in the first half against the number 2 team in the country than the Ohio State Buckeyes scored against an unranked team. And Maryland's good. Maryland will be ranked eventually. But an unranked team, Ohio State scored 17 points in the first half. A freshman off the bench of Duke that has not been playing in big games comes in and scored 18 points in the first half. I don't know if we're gonna make the tournament, dude. I want to make the tournament. I just want to make the tournament. I just want to make the NCAA tournament.
The realization I came to yesterday when it was about 45-12 was that we started this year, opening night, with the biggest smiles on our faces because thank God the Buckeyes are back and we can talk about them on this show, not because we're Buckeyes, but because we are going to be in the tournament.
And you know what else I said, Tate? I said, I don't even know how good they are. I just know they're fun.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that I'm having fun.
You said that. And
it doesn't even, like, I don't think we're Final Four good, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to have fun this year. That lasted a month?
Yeah.
Exactly 1 month.
When it was like 39-8, I realized we're not making the tournament. We can't talk about them on this show, and they're not fun. They are going to be crossed off this list this year. Because they're not good.
We are like a worse version of North Carolina. Everything we said about North Carolina, which was like we are so dependent on the guards being awesome. Except I love Bruce Thornton. I think Bruce Thornton's very good. Bruce Thornton's not as talented as RJ Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of in the same boat. And Bruce Thornton, at least RJ Davis, I guess I don't know, which one's worse. Bruce Thornton will just like disappear.
Mm-hmm.
RJ Davis is like, I will like
he'll let you know he's there.
Yeah, you're not gonna forget that I'm on the floor. I might go 1 for 20, but like I'm getting my shots up. Bruce Thornton will be like, damn, they're playing pretty good defense. I guess I'm just gonna kind of stand over here tonight. We're just and our big guys we have no big guys.
Well,
we have no front court.
It hurt yesterday. I'm talking to Big T, who's walking around with his number 1 team in the country, basketball, number 10 team in the country, whatever. And he goes, thanks for Akpara. Don't forget that if we don't bring Aaron Bradshaw in, who is having his own problems right now, Akpara stays. Akpara leaves. Akpara's down there playing great basketball for the number 1 team in the country, and we don't even have Aaron Bradshaw. What a great week to be an Ohio State Buckeye.
This is, yeah, man. Like the older I get,
didn't see
So-
this coming. You're sad.
I'm not sad. I'm dead.
Oh,
That's worse than sad.
worse than sad.
I'm
You're
dead.
not sad.
I'm waking up every morning before the sun. I said this to you guys off air before the show that it dawned on me driving in this morning that I have seen Nick Fasoli's face more than I've seen the sun in the last couple months. Well, really the last like 6 weeks, and that's not where you want to be. That's not.
It's a
there's
bad
gotta be-
ratio of Fasoli to sun.
There's got to be some sort of name for that condition. Where you're like, Mark, you seem like you're down. What is it? And you're like, I got my Fasoli sun
The
ratio.
Fasoni, yeah.
My Fasoli sun ratio is way off. As we're entering the doldrums of winter, and here in Chicago, the skies are gray. The temperature is like lucky to touch 20 degrees. Last night, holy shit, that wind that was howling. Oh my God, we're getting like 50-mile-an-hour wind, and it's 20 degrees, and it's dark at 3:30 p.m. and skies are gray, and like it's just and the cold winter is like wrapping its dead arms around me and just slowly suffocating me, and I'm just like desperate for like any sort of sliver of hope or any sort of thing to put a smile on my face. I don't turn to the Buckeyes to solve all of my problems.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
I turn to them as like I have a great job. I have a great family. I'm blessed. I generally live a life without want. Like I don't want to complain too much. I don't think I'm like unlucky or like I try to have perspective about it all. But then you just kind of evaluate the Fasoli sun ratio. You kind of evaluate what's going on, and you're just like, I don't ask for much. I don't think I deserve this. It's not like I'm like, I don't think God is like a spiteful God and he's like, punishing me in some way.
This is because we lost to Maryland.
But at the same time, like, it would be nice is all I'm saying. It would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice. It would be nice. That's all I'm saying. It would be nice to have one thing to just wake up and be like, yeah, man, I don't need to see the sun because did you see the Buckeyes at Maryland last night? Like that's enough. That can get me through today. And instead, Tate, it's the exact opposite. And I guess that's the problem. I guess like I would be fine with like a neutral. I don't even just don't kick me in the dick.
Mm-hmm.
And what is today? It's December 5th. And I'm already between, the football thing's its own thing. Football thing's its own thing. I'm one of the few Buckeyes that cares more about the basketball, like rightfully so. I'm personally invested in the program, but I'm not to say the Michigan football loss didn't hurt, but I do care more about the basketball program than the football program at Ohio State. And at a time where the football program is kicking you in the dick,
mm-hmm.
It would be nice. It would just be nice. That's my official statement. It would be nice. I don't think I deserve it. I don't think I'm entitled to it. It's just, having Pitt beat you on a last second shot, and thinking walking away from that game. That's the subtext of last night is that not only are we getting our dicks kicked in against Maryland, but that game against Pitt where they beat us on a last second shot and you walked away from it, you're like, well, Pitt's a pretty good team, so it's
right.
not like listen, don't love the result, but like Pitt's not a bad team. It's not the end of the world that you lose on a last second shot to a good team. And then last night, Pitt gets their dicks kicked in.
You know the phrase, you can't buy a bucket. Oh, man, we can't buy a bucket right now. That's Ohio State as a whole.
Yeah.
We lost on a walk-off 3 to Pitt. We lost on a walk-off 3 to Michigan. We get beat by 1,000 points to Maryland. We turn around and Pitt got beat by 1,000 points to Mississippi State. People, here's what I'll say. I'm still a little younger and a little more spry than you right now. I'm looking for some glass half full. I had to cope last night. People are just trashing Ohio State. Let me remind you that the number 2 ranked women's hockey team in the country is the defending national champions. And our men's soccer team's in the league.
We'll take it, dude. We'll take it. I think that's what I have to have that attitude with all of our teams, I guess. I just have to be a casual Ohio State fan in general. And just like as the year wears on, just like try to find the good teams. And what I was saying is like the older I get, the less I let my teams dictate my happiness. So I don't you can't make me that sad, but at the same time, this past week is really putting that theory to the test. I try not to let I try to live a life as a sports fan at this point, at this juncture of my life, where you can only bring happiness. You don't bring sadness. It's just like
you just don't do the stuff that brings you sadness.
Yeah, like okay, so we
but
lost.
You have to do
the football team lost to Michigan, the biggest choke in the history of that rivalry. I'm not gonna let this affect my life. I'm gonna a win would have been awesome. It would have brought me up here. I'm gonna just live at the rock bottom. I'm already at rock bottom. You can't go lower. But boy, this week is really trying that. It's really trying that theory. I am. You said it perfectly. We need a bucket. I think I might just get in the gym tonight at 2. I might pull a Mark Sears. I'm gonna pull out the gun.
If you pull out, we have the gun out.
Put that as a graphic, and people can interpret it either way.
I'm Mark Sears.
No, just say I'm gonna pull out the gun. That's my official quote.
I got
Mark
you.
Titus on Ohio State fandom right now. I'm pulling out the gun.
Only if you put it on your Instagram story.
No, I think we've reached the point where we just landed back in Columbus, and I gotta get in the gym, and I gotta get shots up at 2 a.m. And I just got to see some go through the basket, dude. We got to find a way. I thought Ohio State was going to make that. That is. I'm going to be consistent with that. As we ebb and flow this season, and we'll get some good wins. I think some good wins are coming. I don't want to get carried away and say we're going Final Four or anything else. I also don't want to say that we totally suck ass. I just want to make the tournament. I that's all I ask. If we make year one, I just want to make the tournament.
You looking ahead?
I don't want to deeper. Just want to make.
Are you going to have some sort of rule about like consecutive losses? Like, can a national champion lose 5 times in a row?
Eight in a row.
Like, because last year we had that the doldrums where it's like, well, we're about to have it at the end of November, beginning December. We lost a heartbreaker. We got our butt kicked. We better beat Rutgers on Saturday at home, because then you know what's next? Auburn, Kentucky, and then we start the tough teams in the Big Ten.
What I'm saying, I'm talking about this now because, again, we had to address Maryland. Maryland's going to be good. Maryland is good. That's
sweet. Your boy Derek Queen is sweet.
That's not even me coping and trying to make this loss look better for Ohio State. You can't put lipstick on that pig. That happened last night. But Maryland, the press defense was giving us fits, and we're supposed to, and for the podcast listeners, I'm doing very heavy air quotes. Supposed to have the best backcourt in the Big Ten. And you pressed us and had us run around like chickens with our heads cut off, throwing the ball all over the gym.
Turnovers.
And it wasn't just turnovers; it was like the dumbest turnovers. Like dudes are standing out of bounds as they catch the ball, dribbling into traps, just like the dumbest, like elementary, basic level shit. Yeah, man, I was going crazy last night, and Derek Queen is him, dude. He is very.
He's Dirk
very good.
Nowitzki.
And I'll say this too, and we can pivot away, but to put a bow on the Ohio State stuff, wanted to address it so you don't think we're cowards. But yeah, we're probably not going to talk about Ohio State for a while until we beat Auburn, and then
we lead off the show with it.
No, but I will humbly step aside. We'll take everything Ohio State. We'll put it on the shelf. Ohio State basketball will not be a talking point on this show moving forward unless something relevant happens. And by relevant, I mean like beating Auburn or Kentucky.
Question: is there any chance you want to put your nuts on the table and hit them with a "you better get us now"?
No.
Not because that is the coolest thing that a coach or a fan can do.
Yeah.
If you're right.
You can't do it. You want to do it?
Absolutely not. I told you after Texas. I've been saying it since Texas that we're not that good. And you weren't saying we were great, but you were just excited.
No, I am towards Ohio State basketball what Will Compton is to Nebraska football. I just I try to be positive vibes only. I try to, and that's my downfall is I will always think that. But now Will thinks they're on the cusp of winning a national championship. I'm a little more realistic about it, but I will always just be like, no, we're good, we're fine, we'll be all right. And then, until selection, even like last year we entered the Big Ten tournament. I'm like, we're fine, we're just gonna win the Big Ten tournament, and we'll be in. It's okay until the bracket comes out. I believe we will be fine. But dude, that was tough last night. But yeah, Maryland's looking pretty good. And as we pivot away from that, the last thing I want to talk about is the Big Ten in general, because the other concern is you're coming, and I'm not even trying to make this an Ohio State Michigan. The timing is terrible with the football game. I mean this seriously. I have throughout my tenure as a Buckeye not really cared that much about Michigan basketball. Like I haven't. The one exception would be the Juwan Howard Hunter Dickinson era.
Right.
Like, how could you not? Like, the guy strikes a man, and Hunter Dickinson is being Hunter Dickinson. Like, of course you're gonna have some feelings towards him. So I generally don't hate Michigan basketball, is what I'm saying, despite being a Buckeye. But as you're watching our lack of front court, the night after watching Michigan's 2 7-footers, which the last time I talked about Michigan, I was like, I'm still not sold on the 7-footers playing together. Boy, they answered that in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
They answered that in a
To
hurry.
a Wisconsin team we were excited about.
Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden are running pick and rolls, and Wisconsin has never seen. I mean, you can clown Wisconsin and be like, you've never seen a pick and roll in your life, but at the same time, you kind of have never seen a pick and roll run by 2 7-footers.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Michigan might be a problem. Michigan has I don't know if I trust their guards though. They kind of have an opposite. I think I said this to you yesterday.
You did. It was a
That
great point.
if you merge the Ohio State Michigan basketball teams
You could just
together,
get us
you really
to get
have
along, yeah.
you have something there, because I don't know if I trust Michigan's guards, but their big guys are going to be a problem. And now I understand why they're playing them together. Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden were dicing up Wisconsin, and that was a to behold, especially at a time where like teams going on the road are like, this is the, like yesterday, I don't want to say I called Kansas Creighton, but people around the office were coming up to like, help me make sense of this. Why is Kansas only favored by like 3.5 at Creighton? Creighton lost to Nebraska. Creighton has lost 3 in a row. They don't seem to be that good. Kalkbrenner is sick. Kansas is the number 1 team in the country. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And same thing I was telling everybody. I was just like, I mean, going on the road is hard. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, playing, especially your first road game of the season, is hard. But then you see exceptions like Michigan going to Madison and getting a win, and you forget how hard it is, and how you see Michigan do stuff like that, and then you're like, oh, going on the road is not that hard at all. But it is. It's hard. It's difficult to win on the road, especially in conference. So this Michigan team might be pretty good, but jury's still out for me on the guard play. But boy, those big guys are good.
Mm-hmm.
The big guys are good, and Derek Queen is good, and Indiana isn't a good basketball team, but they got some big guys. And Purdue has Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's very, very good, and he's a big guy.
Oregon, big
Oregon
win last night against a can't win the national title USC team, but they're 9-0 now. Listen, they beat Alabama.
What I'm saying is, I think we might be in the wrong conference to not have a front court. I think that might be. We might be in the wrong conference for a lack of a front court.
We need conference realignment.
Illinois doesn't have any size, though, do they? Illinois is pretty good. They don't have any. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. They have 6'8", 6'9", 7'1". Yeah, that's right. Okay, so got that one wrong as well. Let me see who we can beat here. All right, that's pretty much all I have. We crossed some teams off. We talked about the games last night. I don't know what anything else.
Just sorry to Sister Jean. You didn't have to. You shouldn't have gone.
Oh, that was funny.
That was very funny.
That was tough, but that was funny. It was funny.
Do you think the guys knew? How do you not? It just shows me they're tired.
Like you're saying, did they? What do you mean by did they know? Did they know she was there? Did they know who she was? Did they know?
Did they know that she was throwing the fist bump up and they just walked past her?
Maybe they just didn't see her, I guess.
How?
How do you not see her though? And how do you play basketball at that school at this point and not know of Sister Jean?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's no way. I counter with this. Did the players know? Did Sister Jean know? Sister Jean was just.
She's bigger than the program at this point, which was my criticism of her the whole time. Name. In fact, I'm gonna prove my point. Name one player on the 2018 Final Four team.
Sister Jean.
Anybody? We should do that as a video series. Just walk around the office. Name one player on Loyola Chicago's 2018 Final Four team. And no one's gonna.
Everyone will know.
And you know why? Because the cameras were always on Sister Jean. But to that point, she's bigger than the program, and you got Sister Jean trying to dap up the team as they're walking to the huddle. Maybe that's why. Maybe there's a rift. Maybe the players are like, I'm sick of this shit.
Trouble in paradise.
What about us? Let's focus on us. All right. That's it. That's the show. Fun weekend ahead. What are some games? Let's do a look ahead. I know there's some good games. I want to get them right there.
I know Purdue plays tonight.
Purdue at Penn State. Sneaky game that probably isn't on anyone's radar. This Penn State team is pretty good. I don't want to say very good yet. They've exceeded expectations, and I think Shrewsbury leaving Penn State, there was a belief maybe that Penn State will fall off a cliff because they had a pretty good run with Shrewsbury. They had the good team of Jalen Pickett playing booty ball. he left, and maybe a lot of Penn State people were like, all right, well, I guess I don't have to care about basketball anymore. Tonight is the program win for Penn State, basically. If they can beat Purdue, that is the announcement that we're back as being a, and I think it's going to be a good game. I think Penn State's pretty good. Like I said earlier, just a second ago, going on the road, difficult thing to do, tough to do in conference as well.
We have a very good Saturday, Kentucky Gonzaga, and we also have Wisconsin Marquette. We didn't talk much about the Marquette game today. Well, we talked about how Iowa State just got.
Iowa State
but they're legit.
Iowa State's good. I didn't watch it. I mean, I'm gonna be honest.
It was ESPN Plus.
It was on ESPN Plus.
See what's going on.
And I don't even know if I have ESPN Plus, but if I do, I can't. Everyone says it's like not that hard to because Big Ten games are on Peacock, and they're like, just get Peacock and you can flip over and watch it. The hard part is going from the one app to the other.
App is bullshit.
That's the bullshit part. So it's like even if I have it, like I on a night like last night where there's so many good games on, I can just hit previous channel. I'm not exiting out of one app to open up another app to. Yeah, I hate that for Iowa State. I do, and I feel like, I don't know. I wish I could do something about it, but I'm too lazy to to find my password for ESPN Plus. They're on ESPN. They are the ESPN Plus team. I don't know what's going on. They got to get out of the Big 12's got to figure something out with the media rights. They got to figure something out. Wisconsin Marquette, yeah, that'll be awesome. That'll be a big game. Two teams coming off a loss, and that is a rivalry game. That's a big one. And then Rutgers Ohio State. It feels like a must-win for both of us.
Absolutely.
Feels like a must-win for both of us. Loser leaves town match.
Early, too.
All right, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on Monday.